එම්.ඒ. සුමන්දිරණ මන්ත්‍රීතුමා ඔබතුමාට විනාඩි 14ක කාලයක්.
Thank you, presiding member, for the opportunity to speak at the second reading of the budget proposals that have been presented to this House by His Excellency, the President and Minister of Finance. Whenever I have spoken on the second reading, and if it was the President who held the portfolio of finance, I have consistently raised my objection to that fact, and I must place my objection today also. I have done this since 2010. The reason is that the Constitution says that public finance is a matter that is entirely in the preserve of Parliament. And therefore, I take the view that it is only a member of Parliament who is accountable to Parliament in that way, who must hold the portfolio of finance. His Excellency the President is not a member of Parliament, although he can attend Parliament and he can answer questions. I take the view that the Chief of the Executive, who is not a member of the legislature, should not hold that post. Now, having said that, I want to start by welcoming some of the proposals that have been made. For instance, we welcome the increase in monthly cost of living allowance of public sector employees and pensioners. Although insufficient, it's a welcome increase. Also, the increase in monthly allowance for persons with disabilities, elderly citizens and kidney patients, most welcome. Then expediting compensation for missing persons. Now, there was a large sum that was allocated several years ago that was not spent. There is an amount in the Appropriation Act, but over and beyond that, His Excellency in his speech said he is allocating a further sum to expedite the payment. Providing land ownership to farmers, yes, that's a very salutary proposal, and we welcome that. Fishery industry development in the northern region, a long felt need, and in the budget proposal that has found mention, and we welcome that. Construction of houses for internally displaced persons, initiating preliminary work for the water supply project in Jaffna. All of these are matters in the budget proposals that we welcome. However, it is one thing to have these proposals, and it is quite another thing to see them realized. So that is why we have reacted with skepticism when even these welcome proposals are mentioned. We have tracked, or several agencies have tracked, the progress made on budget proposals. The Committee on Public Finance has been specially tasked to do this, and between the years 2015 and 2019, I had the honor of chairing that committee, and we started that process, but often came up against a blank wall because there was no information available. And I must say, current chair, Honorable Dr. Harsha De Silva, is also taking a lot of effort to track to see whether previous years' budget proposals have been implemented or to what percentage has it actually been realized. Only 8% of last year's budget proposals, there is even some progress at all. A stupendous 68% has no information at all. No information at all. Then how can we be satisfied? How can we be happy that some progressive proposals have been made? They amount to just words. And I urge the chair of the Committee on Public Finance to sit at least once a month and summon officials to disclose to that committee the progress made on each of these proposals. It must be a continuous assessment process. If not, Parliament cannot actually exercise that powers over public finance. Those words in the Constitution also will become like mere words that are in the budget proposals. So if that is to have any meaning, and in the House, the full House, we will not be able to do that. So now that we have a Committee on Public Finance, I think it would be appropriate to have regular, at least once a month, a meeting to assess the progress on all of these proposals that have been made. I must say that the revenue proposals are wholly unrealistic, and it is not this year alone that it's happening. If this is a trend, then we must know that those are unrealistic. Even in the past years, we have found that it's a habit to make overestimation of revenue and underestimation of expenses. That's the way you show at the budget time, at the budget proposal time at least, that's the way you show a smaller deficit, knowing all too well that that is a false figure, that the deficit is actually much, much larger, several times more. So the revenue proposals are wholly unrealistic. Even now, the reason given for the increase in the VAT percentage is said to be revenue has not been collected as envisaged. So we knew that well before. How did we know that? Because revenue has never been collected as anticipated or as disclosed as the revenue proposal. So we know that. Now that is being said as a reason for burdening the entire population with a VAT rate increase. If the inland revenue properly collected taxes from those who are obliged to pay taxes, we obviously won't be in this state. And that is why in the governance diagnostics, the IMF has correctly pointed to revenue collection authorities, the customs, the inland revenue, as being severely corrupt, high officials being corrupt. My only grouse with that report is that they left the political masters out of it. In fact, the revenue collection authorities are shielded and protected by the political masters in office who are more corrupt than those officials themselves. Now that is that is the reason why the country went into bankruptcy. And there is also heavy disparity in allocations. Defense continues to be a high expenditure. We are set to have the 17th largest army in the world. For a small country such as ours, 17th largest, just the size of the army itself. I can understand when, at a time when that was perhaps necessary, but 15 years or 14 years after the internal strife ended, there doesn't seem to have been any effort taken to demobilize the armed forces. That effort has not happened at all. And so we keep pumping money into a sector that is not necessary to be maintained in the current context. And with regard to corruption, the Supreme Court delivered a judgment yesterday, 265 pages. Most welcome judgment of the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, it's a majority judgment. One judge, for reasons that he has stated, has dissented, but it's a 4-1 judgment holding the then President, Ministers of Finance who held that portfolio, governors of Central Bank, the successive governors, Secretary Treasury, advisor to the President, one member of the Monetary Board, and the Monetary Board itself responsible for the collapse of the economy. Now, I want to recount a particular series of events. The advisor to the President, Dr. P.B. Jayasundara, was found guilty by the Supreme Court in the case of Vasudeva Nanayakkara versus K.N. Choksi. And I must disclose my interest in the matter because I was the counsel who appeared for Vasudeva Nanayakkara. He was found guilty and fined rupees 500,000 at that time by the Supreme Court. He paid the fine. He was told that he cannot hold public office thereafter. He gave an affidavit to court stating that he will not hold any public office thereafter. Then there was a change in the office of the Chief Justice. And the new Chief Justice, the Minister of Justice is asking me to name the person. I will name him. I will tell. It's not wrong to name. The new Chief Justice, Asoka De Silva, constituted a court to which Dr. P.B. Jayasundara made an application to withdraw his affidavit. Why? Because then President Mahinda Rajapaksa insisted that P.B. Jayasundara and P.B. Jayasundara alone must be appointed Secretary to the Treasury. As counsel for Honorable Vasudeva Nanayakkara, I objected to this. One day the full court sat, 10 judges sat, one judge was unavailable, and then a 7-judge bench allowed it with one dissenter. Honorable Shirani Tilakawardena wrote a dissenting judgment, a dissenting order. Others allowed it. And he was appointed Secretary to the Treasury. The Chief Justice at that time, who loved it. The day after his retirement became the legal advisor to the then president. So, corruption in high places is demonstrated by this just one example. And now the Supreme Court again finds that president, his two brothers, Dr. P.B. Jayasundara and others, responsible for the collapse of the economy. There is one thing that they have not done and that they should have done. The court should have done. In the Easter bombing case, for failure to prevent the attack, the former president, several others were asked to pay hundreds of millions in compensation. But in yesterday's judgment, those who have been found guilty, found responsible for the economy collapsing in this country, don't have to pay any compensation. Court says petitioners did not ask for compensation. No, the court could have granted just and equitable relief. Surely the Rajapaksa brothers have enough money to pay the 22 million people in this country. Surely if a compensation has been ordered, all the money that is parked outside the country can be brought. Minister of Justice himself said several people have parked their money outside the country. It can be brought and the country's economy can be revived just on that alone. Country's economy collapsed because the public money has been stolen by president and his brothers and several those others who worked with them. They have taken the money out of the country. What the Supreme Court should have done is ordered them to pay compensation for every citizen of this country and bring that money into the treasury, and that would have seen the revival of this country's economy. This is not the end. Perhaps due to the, I'm concluding, perhaps due to the nature of the proceedings in the Supreme Court, that is what the court has held. But I'm sure now must start a recovery process from those who have been held responsible by the Supreme Court. And every citizen of this country is entitled to make that claim, to ask them to bring the money back and make this economy stand back again. Thank you.